The courageous leadership is different from the hourly associate that is just coming to work to get a paycheck, but there's still leadership they need to exhibit. The behaviors in that leadership are very different when you get to the top level of a senior manager or a regional vice president. They have courageous leadership too, but the behaviors within that courageous leadership are completely different.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Keep the Change. We're so glad you're here. And you might be wondering, what have you dropped into? You are in the back room listening to Bart and Frank talk leadership, talk transformation, talk the excellence of how CarMax has evolved, right? I mean, they did it right. They've done it right. Everybody's trying to figure out the secret sauce. He just told me in the last 5 minutes. As soon as he was telling me, I thought, man, I got to hit record. So let me introduce you, ladies and gentlemen. Frank Knox is the VP of Unique Auto Sourcing, and he'll tell you all about that. He's a father. He's a man of God. His daughter is 26 years old, and he's been a husband for 28 years. He's just a good person. Now, how this happened? How did it happen that he and I got together? Well, I was at NADA, and Wendy Reeds, I think, or maybe it was Hopper, introduced us, and I thought I was just blown away by his energy. And he had such a great heart. He was a great communicator, and I thought, man, people need to hear this man's story and need to hear his expertise. So as always, we're going to talk about leadership and transformation in this room. But man, thank you, Frank, for being in the room. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for hanging out and having a cup of coffee with me. Let's talk transformation and leadership, my friend. Welcome to Keep the Change.
Hey, thank you, Bart. I appreciate the time this morning. And, it was definitely a pleasure meeting you down in New Orleans. And I'm glad we got to connect again. And I think we're going to really dive deep into some principles here this morning. So hopefully, you'll be able to challenge me and I'll challenge you a bit. And then we'll put something on the minds of anyone who's out there watching. So thank you.
Right on. So tell us about you. Let's start with you. It's all about us. talk to us about who Frank Knox is. Give us the story.
So I guess I can go back a ways and, talk about, I grew up in, an interesting area, let's say, of St. Louis, and mom and dad married for, over 40 years together. Raised 5 of us kids. I am the only boy in the family. I have 4 sisters, and I always admired my dad because no matter what, through it all, and he wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but one thing was always going to be certain. He was always going to be there for us as a family. He was always going to be in church every Sunday. And he was always going to be that dad that pushed us, that told us, hey, you have to be better. You have to be better. And here are the reasons why that you have to be better. And, the reasons why is because he came from, Alabama. My mom was from Mississippi. They really cut their teeth during, that civil rights era, right? Where things weren't easy to be a, Black family in the South. And so as they, raised us in St. Louis, we encountered some of those things, and that's always going to be something we look back that made us that much stronger. But my dad worked 2, 3 jobs at a time. He would go to work. He was he worked in the hospital system. He was an assistant administrator. He rose through the ranks, put himself through night school, rose through the ranks, but as a Black man wasn't compensated enough to really provide a great living for us. And so he would suit and tie by day and janitor at night, and would put us, manage to put all 5 of us through private school so that we would have the best education. So I tell that story as a bit of a backdrop to say, who am I? Well, I modeled myself after my dad. Like, I wanted to be, a strong Christian man. I wanted to walk in his footsteps of being a strong professional. And, look, I'm like my dad. None of us are perfect. I didn't have it perfect. It took me a while to figure it out. I wasn't always the perfect dad or the perfect. I'm still not. We all make mistakes, but I wasn't always the perfect husband, but it took time for us to figure it out and grow and get it right. And just like everyone, I had to find my identity. So when you ask the question,
Yes.
who am I? I say first and foremost, I'm a Christian. First is my identity. I'm a father and husband as part of my identity. And then everything else starts to fall in line behind that. A few years back, I came up with, really what was my winning formula in life. And I call it, my 5 F's. And my 5 F's are, I really, at the foundation of everything is my faith. My fitness is a big part of that, being mentally fit, physically fit, emotionally fit. And then, my finances are the third F, and then my family and friends, right? And, the first three things that I named off, well, if those three things aren't really in order, it becomes really challenging to be able to help and support my family and friends. So
Mm.
I need those three things as my foundation to be able to give to others. So in a nutshell, that's who I am.
Yeah.
That's what I embrace. Notice I mean, I haven't talked a lot about professional life because I feel like all of those things in my circle, the 5 F's, they come really before anything professionally.
Yeah, that's why you and I hit it off like this, man. God does not, we get it. It's like the most overused phrase, make mistakes. There are no coincidences.
That's
But,
right.
there's when people are kindred spirits, and it doesn't matter background, it doesn't matter skin color, it doesn't matter any of that. Because my background was spoiled white rich kid in Toledo, Ohio, right? And here we
Okay.
are together. And I'm not proud of that. I mean, it didn't grow me, right? What grew me is when I finally grew up. That's what grew me. When it grew me is when I was finally on my knees and I weighed 150 pounds and I was crying because I just got fired from a multi-$100,000 a year job as a finance manager. And when what grew me is walking on my hands and knees to the phone and calling the rehab center. What grew me is going through that rehab center. What grew me is one day at a time, listening to what they said. What grew me is they told me I wouldn't make it. What grew me is I graduated. What grew me is I didn't want to be that person for my daughter anymore. I wanted to be the
Right.
person that my daughter would say, that's my daddy, right? Like your daughter
Yeah.
says about you. But the greatest hero, I love that about your dad. My dad, a good man, a lot of friends, wouldn't put him way up there on the dad scale, and frankly, wouldn't put him way up there, no offense to my dad, on how to act morally scale. But I so admire when I look at success, when I study people of success, when I look at the Kobe's of the world, which of course super successful, but then the people you don't know as well. When I see how Jalen Hurts handled winning the Super Bowl in such a humble fashion, quiet by
Yeah.
himself, sitting down, smoking a cigar, hugging the trophy with nobody else around, seeing the I need to soak this in mentality. He's
That's right.
so again, a man grew up in the South that nobody believed in Jalen Hurts really after he had adversity and people found out who he is. Nobody believed in him. And you know what? I'm not going to say I did, but I love the character of the man. I could see the character of the man. And I love that guy. I mean, he's 30 years younger than me, and he's been such a mentor for me watching how he handles the press. And he was dressed to the nines a couple days ago, and somebody said, "What's that jacket?" And he said, "The clothes don't make the man." Few
Yeah.
words,
Yeah.
strong, right? So
Yeah.
when you mention your dad, it's like, what a hero of raising 5 kids, having all those jobs, tie by day, janitor by night. What's your dad's name?
Frank Sr.
Frank Sr. Shout out to Frank Sr. He's my hero, right? A man like that can have such an impact. Nobody knows who he is, but the impact that he has on you and your sisters, and that you have had on your wife and you have on your daughter, it's sometimes silent, but it can be so loud, so powerful. And you show it, man. I mean, you show it in who you are. So congratulations to him for you, and for you to understand it. You could have rebelled, but you didn't. The first thing you said is, my dad's my guy. My mom would probably be mine. Oh, I know she would be. My mom, I don't know if I told you this, but She lived to 97. She became a truck dealer, international truck dealer. I've said this on the podcast before, but since we're having
Okay.
a cup of coffee, I'll tell you real quick.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
took over the family truck dealership, International Harvester dealership, when my dad died. My dad had canceled her insurance, Frank. She had no money. She had a lifestyle, and she had to maintain her life. And she went and she started operating this truck dealership. Nobody knew what she did at night, but she was going to school to learn to be a business person. She'd never been to business school before, man.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and
Wow.
she's run this dealership that was actually very successful, except that the franchise was in bankruptcy. So her husband dies, franchise is in bankruptcy. The place had parts going out the back and money going out the front. She had to settle the whole thing down, bring everybody together. And she did that for 30 years. So,
Wow.
I mean, So when I posted this a couple of days ago, who's your hero? Frank Knox's hero is Frank Senior. You just said it. My hero is Virginia Nollenberger. And thank you so much for sharing that, because, and also my heroes are my grandparents. My mama, get this, Frank, a week before she died, I prayed the believer's prayer over her. And I introduced her to Christ, and she accepted Christ a week before she died, man.
Wow.
And a week later, Jesus took her. And there's more to that story. I'll tell you some other time. But my grandparents, the reason I'm here, this punk kid, drug addict, the reason I'm here is my grandparents never gave up on praying for me. They were my prayer warriors. And I'm here right now because of them. Unbelievable. Bessie and Harold Nollenberger, man. Yeah, so our DNA, even though I wavered, dude, I was a prodigal son. I came home, right?
Yeah.
And so
thank
you for sharing that incredible story. So tell us so you've been married 28 years, your daughter's 26. So obviously incredible family. Faith has been a huge part of you. I love that. And thank you for sharing that. Now, tell us a little bit on your journey as you look at, we're here today to talk about leadership, either at home or in the workplace. You were talking about the incredible, you've spent time with CarMax. I want you to tell us about that, because I think we're all curious. But tell us about the journey that you got through your career and some of the leadership lessons that you learned through them as you now get into your own business with Unique Auto.
Yeah. So, I think leadership is one of those things that you learn over time, and it only improves over time depending on, what you get to participate in. Like, I hear people tell others all the time, oh, these are natural born leaders. And I say, there's no such thing as a natural born leader. Like, leadership is a behavior that is learned over time through, sometimes hard, battle tested wounds that you have. And I truly believe that. And so, my journey with leadership really started way back I'd probably say, in high school, right? Like, you'd have to go back, what am I, 50 now? So you'd have to go back some years to really understand that journey, because, I went to, I think I shared with you that, my dad putting us through private school meant that, we went to Lutheran grade school. We went to a Lutheran high school. I went to a Lutheran college. And part of that journey, I got to be part of, arguably one of the best football teams in Missouri history. And, and I say that, and you can look it up, but we were state champions 3 consecutive years, which was unheard of. I don't think anyone has really done it again in Missouri. I'd have to go check the record books, but I was part of that team. And so we started getting this, this leadership ingrained in us from our coaches, right? Like, in Carl Holshin and Mr. Russell, our 2 high school coaches that started to ingrain this into us every step of the way of what it was going to be like to be a black man. So 2 white coaches. Our football team was predominantly black, and they were teaching us, this is what it's going to be like to be a man. This is what it's going to take. And so they ingrained it in us. Well, Then I lost some of it because I went to college, and long story short, I ended up at Concordia University in Chicago, Lutheran college, small college. In my mind, I was supposed to be playing D1 football because I had the talent. But long story short, I didn't have the grades in high school. I was too busy doing all the other things that my dad told me not to do. I was out there doing that. So I didn't have the grades to go play D1. And every D1 school that I talked to said, yep, we want you. Come play for us, but you're going to have to sit out a year and get your grades up at the community college or whatever. And then you can be a part of the actual playing. Well, Concordia came and said, we want you now. Come play for us, and we'll figure the rest out. So that's all I needed to hear was, hey, and this is where I say God always has a plan, right? Because I wasn't supposed to be at Concordia. All my friends that I played with went and played D1 football somewhere, and I ended up at Concordia. And all I needed to hear from the coach was, and the coach was Jim Brown, and he
The
came.
Jim Brown?
No, not
Yeah, I
the
know
Jim
that.
Brown. Jim Brown, Braun. He came to my parents' house and said, to my parents, we're going to get him on the straight and narrow. He's going to go here. And this is what I'm going to be with him step by step the entire way. My parents heard that. All I heard was I get to be a starter on a college team my freshman year. That's all I needed to know. I'm in. So I end up there and immediately go right back to doing all the things that I was doing when I was, in high school. I don't care. I'm playing football. I don't care about the grades. None of that means anything to me except playing football. Well, I go on, and this is where the leadership journey gets really tough. I get selected as the captain of the football team my sophomore year. And man, Bart, you couldn't tell me anything. I was the man on campus, and I knew it, and I was out drinking and partying, and I could care less about anything else other than everybody knows me. I'm playing football. I'm the captain. All my friends, they're at D1 schools and they're riding the bench, but here I am, and I'm a starter, and I'm already the captain. And we went into that season, my sophomore year, and man, let me tell you, we went 0-10. We
Ouch.
lost every single game. And and that was where my leadership was tested the most, because here I am, the leader of these guys. I'm not really working out like we're supposed to. I'm out partying, and I'm wondering, like, and my team's following me, right? Like we're all out partying and we're not taking it seriously. And yeah, we lost every game. We got our butts handed to us. All we could do was look around and point at everything else that was wrong.
Wow.
And it wasn't until the following year where we decided, you know what? All right, I decided I needed to change myself, number one. And at that point, and this is, again, so you talk about leadership journey starting, this is where mine started. I started in getting involved into student ministry on the campus. I was leading some Bible studies. I was, very involved in the Minority Student Alliance. I was, nominated as the president of the Minority Student Alliance. So I started doing these things, but all the while I had this, I guess, a demon tugging at me that, hey man, that, the drinking and the partying, that's still good stuff. Like you don't need to abandon that stuff. Or this, and mind you, this is a Christian college, right?
Right.
And I'm out doing those things. Long story short, turn things around, end up, meeting my wife at college. She is, such a special person to put up with me all these years.
What's her name? What's your wife's name?
Jennifer.
Jennifer, happy Valentine's Day.
So she's put up with me for all these years. It's funny because, even in all of that, we graduate. She graduates a year before I do. I'm a year behind her. So she's an older woman. But, we graduate, we get married, we have, our daughter. And I'd love to say that, man, it was just a happy ending and things were just great. Well, we got involved in the church, Catholic church at the time, and then things kind of fell off. And then, we got back in and then we'd fall off. We'd go to church and then we'd fall off. And all the while, our marriage was up and down at the same time, right? I started working for CarMax, and the same thing for me held true with CarMax. So, as I move into talking about professional life, CarMax was very intentional about having a one-on-one touch base with a mentor. So you come into CarMax, you're assigned a mentor. That mentor is with you every single month, watching your behaviors and giving you feedback every single month in your file review. Every month you had to sit down with your mentor and they would say, hey, so this person was like your coach. They'd sit down and say, hey, Frank, you're going off the rails, and here are the things that I noticed. Here's specific days. Here's specific things you did. And you know what I do? I try to argue the points. They're giving me specific days, times, what I did. And I go, yeah, but you don't understand. There was something else that happened that made me do that. And for the longest time, I came on board, I got to a buyer position. I rose quickly to a senior buyer position within a year and a half. And then my career at CarMax, it stagnated, right? Because I made it to senior buyer again. I had success and I wanted to be a purchasing manager, a senior level position at CarMax, but I wasn't willing to embrace all of the core competencies that they lay out for you with specific behaviors of, hey, this is what success looks like. I wasn't willing to embrace those things. And it wasn't until I embraced it and said, okay, I'm going to get serious about this. And it was right about the time I met three guys who I really admired. And we were at a Milwaukee Brewers baseball game. And I remember they were all in senior manager positions and I wasn't. And I was griping and complaining and I can't believe I haven't gotten promoted yet. I don't know what's going. And they all sat me down and they, the three of them kind of surrounded me and they said, you know why you're not promoted? Your ego, and you don't take feedback. And if you stay that way, and I remember my closest friend at that time, Dan Holtzman, saying, if you stay that way, it's not only going to continue to ruin your work life and your professional life, at some point, it will absolutely ruin you in other ways.
I want to jump in, man. You got so many nuggets there. Excuse me. I want to jump in. First of all, going to work for Automax. First thing they did, or CarMax. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
for
CarMax.
For CarMax, the first thing that they did was get you a mentor. And I love that. And I think about how many automobile dealers listening to this have said, how is it that CarMax has had such great success, right? And it's like, there it is. I love what Tony Robbins says, don't reinvent the wheel. Find out the exact thing that company, that person's doing and model that. And it's so interesting that we get the doo-doo syndrome. First of all, we don't check to see what they're doing because our egos get in the way. But then we don't do what we know how to do. So we're walking in doo-doo because we don't want to do what we're supposed to do, right? So back to mentor. Man, I could go on about this, man. What I talk about a lot is activation. Because you and I talked about this offline, that I'm believing I'm a head coach. And I don't mean a head coach. I mean the head coach. If we don't work on the head of our people, their thinking and what's going on in their minds, we can't change their habits. James Clear, we talked about that offline. All of a sudden, he writes a book and he's an expert in habits. Why not you and I become expert in habits? Why not we as leaders in dealerships become an expert in helping people develop better habits? Because they can develop better habits in communication, they're going to have better skills. So incredible. I think there were some red flags there to me that what we used to do, Frank, And this is why I think it takes some people so long to hear the message. What we used to do, even as a mentor, is tell them, I'm your mentor. I've got experience, strength, and hope. This is what you're going to do to be successful. People don't hear that. What they hear is, Frank, what do you want? Why is that important to you? Frank, let's talk about the things that you think you need to do to be successful. Frank, make a list of things. Now, Frank, let me ask you, why do you think that works? What do you think you're going to do about that? What do you need to tweak about that? What's the difference? The difference is to activate the brain of a Frank Knox, college graduate, high school athlete, all-state football player, winner, because you can self-coach, but you can't self-coach if you don't think. And I think to me, that's just so powerful. CarMax gets it. They start with a mentor, but I'm thinking even more importantly, what changed you was your buddies. Hey man, got to get out of the ego. But there's a question in that. I love that. I love that. We need people to pour into us, but there's a question in there. The question that takes a person from a victim, which is where you were, to a victim is where you are. To a victor is where you are. You had to transform. And how do you transform? Because somewhere along the line, that question had to be, what's my role in this?
Yeah.
And your role is to get out of me and start thinking about we. So talk to us more about that transformation. I'm so blown away again by the mentorship program and the fact that they put that person in place. And they've got other things that you and I talked about offline that were really powerful, that if I'm a car dealer, I'm thinking, how do I put that in place? How do I get that piece in place? And here's the why. And again, I don't want to take over this, Frank, but I'm just really passionate. I've had a lot of coffee this morning. Yeah, so here's the why. There's people out there that are struggling with their headspace, right? And if we don't figure that out, we're missing that part of developing culture in the dealership, right? You can put culture in place, but you can't tell somebody culture. You got to make sure your leaders own that culture by how they think. So go ahead.
Yeah. So, one of the things that CarMax did that I embraced and carry with me is, identifying the core competencies that make sense for your organization. So something like courageous leadership or teamwork or your communication or whatever the core competencies that matter to you in your organization to be successful. The first thing is identifying those things. And now, the next part of that really came down to observations. I can't sit down with Bart and start telling Bart how to be a better Bart until I've sat back and observed Bart in his natural habitat to see, all right, now that I've observed you, let me give you some specific examples. So all too often, what I've seen is people will talk in general terms. Well, on this, you did this. Well, when did I do it? When did you see it? Oh, well, I heard about it. Well, if it's not a firsthand account, how can you possibly provide me with feedback on how to get better?
Good.
You're
So good.
only using information that was transferred to you by someone else. So that's the first thing. Hey, what are the core competencies? And then are you truly observing those core competencies and looking for the behaviors so that you can now sit and start to understand 3 components. And this is another thing that CarMax ingrained in me. And they do such a great job of teaching these habits to their senior level managers and executives. The reason you didn't execute at a high level and exhibit the behavior that I wanted comes down to 3 things: your head, your hand, or your heart, right?
Yeah.
So if it's a hand issue, right, you just physically, you're not capable of doing that job, which means I need to pluck you out and have you go do something else where you can be super successful. That's my job as a mentor. That's my job as a leader, to recognize, hey, your head's in the game, man, and you really want to do a good job. You just can't. Let me find something where you will be successful. If it's a head issue, it means that I simply didn't give you the knowledge. That's on me. That's on me as a leader to make sure you have the knowledge, that you understand the behavior, you understand the expectations that I have of you, right? That's a mental piece. The heart piece, well, I can't train you on that, right? Like the heart piece is you're not in it. You're disengaged from this. I can try to help you and point out all the reasons why you may have disengagement, but that's going to take a longer time. The hand piece and the head piece, those two things don't take very long. I can give you knowledge today, and I can figure out today if you can absolutely go out there and perform the job, or do I need to have you go do something else. But the heart piece, if you're not in it, that's going to take me months to figure out and repair that piece, right? So,
Yeah.
I know you said you're a head coach, and really what you're describing to me is a heart coach, right? Like
Yeah,
I
exactly.
want you, I want
100%.
your heart to be in it, and
Yeah.
part of that heart being in it, that's a two-way street, right? I can
Yeah.
point out the behaviors, but you have to be willing to embrace those behaviors and say, you know what, that was me. I
Yeah.
did, you know what? I did exhibit those behaviors on that day. I
Yeah.
did, I wasn't willing to challenge in the face of adversity, or
Mm.
I didn't communicate well, or whatever it is. I have to be willing to accept it in order to be able to get a little bit better. But it has to be defined by the leader that's in place.
Yeah, that's so good because you and I are talking the same thing. The head and the heart are the same definition. The way I'm putting it, as the head is our thinking. The head is who we are. The head is what we want to be. The head is our behaviors. And the way you're putting it is that's the heart, right? So I
That's
get
right.
it. It's a head and the heart issue, the way both of us are talking. Thank you so much for sharing that. You know what's so fascinating about and I want you to get into unique auto sourcing here in a minute, but what's so fascinating about, again, what CarMax has done is they've been very successful. Again, very. And there's certain things that they've done to be successful, but it starts with the people, is what I'm hearing you say. And it wasn't just
110%.
yes. And that's not what happens in most car dealerships. It usually starts with the process of, and again, I'm not trying to dig on car dealerships. Frankly, I've worked for training companies that didn't train their trainers, right? Just go out and do it. Do what, right?
Right,
And I
right,
worked for
right.
training companies like Half a Car years ago. Dude, we spent 3 months learning the processes. And today I can still talk those, right? So in terms of where you define head, they gave us the knowledge. I worked for Scion where we spent 6 months in rooms with no windows defining processes. So when we went out, no matter how flawed the process might have been, we were drinking the Kool-Aid, right? Because we'd
Yeah.
spent all that time in it. But back to where you're coming from. They didn't talk about profit. They didn't talk about the P&I profit, right?
That's right.
They talked about the people. So tell us about that. I mean, it's not they didn't talk about profit. I want you to define that for me and put it in your words. But that wasn't the first thing. It wasn't just our ROI first. It was let's get the most important thing is our people. One last thing I want to land on this. There's another friend of the show, Joel Manby, wrote a book called Love Works. And he was the CEO of Dollywood. He was the CEO of SeaWorld. He was the CEO of South. And in that book, he uses 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter, as his basis for the books. Love is patient, love is kind, love does not boast. Now, he's got data, Frank, to prove that he led that way. He's a great leader. He's a wonderful man. He's not a dictator. He's an incredible visionary. He's a person of faith. He walked in his faith. He walked in his beliefs, but he was an incredibly strong leader. The result was customer satisfaction was through the roof in all of his companies he led. Employee satisfaction was through the roof in all the customers and all the companies he led. And what else? Profit was through the roof in all the companies he led because he didn't focus just on profit. He started with the people. So tell us CarMax's philosophy, and then you can just ease right into what you're doing now.
Yeah. So, CarMax philosophy, and from day one, this is going all the way back to '03 when I started. And think about this. It was such an impactful time in my life that I remember that date like I remember my daughter's birthday or anniversary, like 11/17/2003, my first
Wow.
day at CarMax.
Wow.
And what you hear time and time again from CarMax associates, take care of the people will take care of the customer, and the rest takes care of itself. Take care of the people, they'll take care of your customers. The rest takes care of itself.
Dude, that's
It's
why
it's
don't other
such
people hear that?
it's such a simple philosophy, but it's simple, but because it's simple, it sticks. And it's stuck with me all these years. And any car, you can walk into a CarMax now and say, "Hey, is this the philosophy?" And they're going to say, "Oh yeah, take care of the people. Yeah, take care. We'll take care of the customer, and the rest, it'll take care of itself." And
Hmm.
CarMax did that, and they lived that every step of the way by making sure that they were always invested in doing the right thing, right? Giving back to the community, right? CarMax Cares was a big part of the organization, building playgrounds with Kaboom in underprivileged areas. Like, this is a major corporation. I had a chance, and I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Our church here in Chicago, Christ Community, relatively big church here in the suburbs, and we just had a series, and it was all about you know people needing churches, right? Like, people need church because church becomes their compass. It becomes the North Star for the community. Church gives, they take care of the community. People want to be involved. The kids go there. I mean, you think back to, like, one of the things that was ingrained in me was we were at the church on Sunday, we were at the church on Monday, handbell choir. Yes, I was in handbell choir on Wednesday night. You were in the choir rehearsal on Thursdays. I mean, you spent, youth group on Friday. You spent all this time in the church, and it taught you how to give to others. I say that because our church brought in the CEO. We do an inspiring story every, few months. They brought in the CEO of Hobby Lobby. And if you know anything about the CEO of Hobby Lobby, or Hobby Lobby, they're a Christian organization. They give away 50%. I was floored. They give away 50% of their profits and they're still ultra successful, and they're still expanding, and they're still have ultra success as a company because they give to others and they take care of their people. This is where I look and what we want to do as an organization with Unique Auto Sourcing and Solutions, right? And really, it's three separate companies that we have, right? Justin Campbell is the owner. He's been around it since 2008, and a little rough around the edges. Justin wouldn't mind me telling you this. Loves to wear t-shirt and shorts. He's just that guy, but he's got a big heart of gold that says, "I'm just going to take care of people. I will take care of people, and everything else is going to be fine. I don't worry about the other stuff. Yeah, I have to a little bit, but I worry more about the people. I worry more about people who I can trust, people who are trusting me, people who, when you come to work." And this is something that sold me on Justin, and why I ended up at this organization versus going to work for a, big name company again. I sat down with Justin, and he shared with me his philosophy. And his philosophy was, "Frank, people come to work here and they're entrusting their entire family to me. Not just you, it's your entire family, because
Oh,
your income and what happens here impacts your whole family. Your mood and who you are when you go home impacts
right.
your entire family. So I have to take that seriously and say, how are we going to take care of our people and have a servant leadership attitude? How are we going to make sure that they feel good about what it is that they do? We're going to make sure that they feel good about this small little company trying to do big things. We're going to make sure that we embrace and take care of people, even when it's not in our best interest, even when it feels like, hey, it's going to hurt us financially. We're still going to take care of the people because the finances will come back. The people don't.
Yeah, man, Frank, that is just, you and I got to do this more than once. We got to get back on here in another month and just part 2 of this. So what is it specifically that Unique Auto, we got a couple minutes, that Unique Auto does? And thank you again for sharing that, because, I'm believing that in my world that I'm attracted to people that are like-minded, that think the same way. I think that's great, but I also want to be attracted to the people that aren't like-minded, so that there's maybe something that I can activate within them to have a different view, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love the part where you said people, they would watch. I love that, because they knew that because of watching, they really knew to whom they were mentoring and coaching. Marshall Goldsmith wrote a number of books on coaching, and he talks about doing a 360 assessment. Matter of fact, he was a CEO for Alan Mulally, and he talks about doing a 360 assessment with all his clients, and I've adopted that. And that is just, if I can't be in your store, I'm going to find out what everybody knows and what they say about you. And he gets all that information, and that's how he starts his coaching sessions. Because it doesn't matter what Billy says about Billy. Of course it does, but it matters about the 200 employees that report to Billy about what they say about Billy. And that sometimes can be such a mirror for anybody trying to learn, right?
Well, and I'm laughing because it's so interesting to me, because these principles, again, what makes CarMax great, right? Like, and I'm giving away a lot of things that make CarMax great, but all of this stuff is out there. These aren't secrets, right? Like it's all out there, and it's about execution. Well, one of the things that CarMax does when you get to be a senior level manager, executive and beyond, is they send out these random 360 feedback, multiple people in your organization.
Yeah.
And so your regional vice president, so if you're a senior manager in a store, your regional vice president, he's not there every day to see what's happening. So how is he going to understand what's happening? Oh,
right.
Frank, I got these 10 360 feedback forms back. And here's what people are saying about you.
Yeah.
You want to talk about holding a mirror up.
Yeah. And humility.
There's no disputing when someone says, on this day, Frank did blah, 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 and here's how it made me feel. Oh, wow. Wow, I didn't recognize that. So
that's so good.
360 feedback is a big part. But, the one thing that Unique Auto Sourcing, and I'll, land the plane here. The one thing that when we launched Unique Auto Sourcing, the mentality that Justin and I had when we launched this company was we wanted to be a company that could help dealers in most cases do what they didn't have time to do or what they were unable to do. And so we launched this company with, some expert buyers that, were with me at Off Lease Only. And we found a couple of more out there in the industry that wanted to be a part of our growth. And what we do is we go into dealerships and we tell dealers, Mr. Dealer, we understand you don't have the inventory that you need, but our goal is to take this off of your plate. And not only are we going to take off your plate having to go and buy the inventory, we're going to help you build a buy plan. We're going to help you find the inventory. We're going to help you with having an expert team of buyers that can go out and source the inventory, so you don't have to hire and train anybody. We already have them for you. It's a plug and play option. We're going to then help you with transportation and getting that car to your dealership. And then if there's an issue, we're going to go to the auction and help you arbitrate the car. So, Mr. Dealer, all of this is off your plate so you can go and do what you do best. Coach, develop, best deals, work with your team, Because if you're a used car manager, and every used car manager out there who's listening knows what I'm about to say. When you're behind that computer and you have to find cars and you're shopping for 5, 6, 7 hours, if that's what you're doing, you're not paying attention to anything else around you because you're focused on the screen. You're trying to buy cars.
Yeah.
Well, this allows you to now connect with the single most important resource that you have, your
Yeah.
people. It allows you to spend that time that you would have been at a computer, spend that time training and developing your team to take care of your customers.
Frank, that's just sexy. It really is, man. I think about that. Well, today at Used Cars with David Long on Clubhouse has a used car show every day, every Friday, and you're there and I'm there. And he talked, and one of the gentlemen that I so respect and you do too is Brian Kramer, and he talked about mental fatigue. And here's a guy who ran a big Toyota store in Southern Florida, and he's now with Cars.com. Is that correct?
Yeah, Cars Commerce. Yep.
Cars Commerce,
Cars
excuse me.
Yep.
And so he talked about mental fatigue, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's it. Why do we have mental fatigue? Because it's in here. It's in our, you can't see it maybe, but it's in our head. And unless we get that stuff out, unless we work on that, unless we have a source to help us with that, we can't focus on what we do best. So in your case, you're taking some of that mental fatigue off their plate so they can do what they're supposed to do to develop their people, who develop their people, who develop their people. My whole mission, dude, is to help managers be level 4 leaders. John Maxwell talks about 5 levels of leadership. You don't have to be level 5, man. Be a level 4. These are people that develop people. That's where performance increases. That's where change happens. So strong, man.
And that's where, again, going back to that philosophy, take care of the people, they'll take care of the customer, and the rest takes care of itself. Well, think about if you're a used car manager, now you got 6 extra hours in your day to go and just be with your people. How much better are those people going to be with the customers that they interact, the very next customer, right? So that's why we started this organization. The dealers that are using us, they're seeing subtraction. We've only been around for about 1.5 years, but it feels like, with as much as we've put our name out there, it feels like we've been around for years, but the sourcing side is only about 18 months in right now.
Right on. So interesting as you say that. I remember my used car manager days when I was doing all of that, right? Big Toyota store. We sold about 400 used cars in Northern California. And I'd go home just not very nice. I'd kick the dog and yell at the kids. And, again, I'm probably exaggerating, but I'm probably not too, because that was so much of a mind drain. So that you to be able to take that off. You talked about heart earlier. That's a great heart piece. I'm going to help them be better at what they really do. And I love it.
Yeah, you kicked the dog because somebody kicked you. And someone kicked you because somebody probably kicked them, right? And at some point, the cycle has to stop. And that's, again, a little bit of what we try to put out there is we just want to try to stop the cycle.
Yeah, me too. In a different space, but me too, man. So I want to stop the cycle. I want, when we can enjoy what we're doing at home and add value. And I love what John Maxwell says. We're people of value who add value to people of value. When you and I can add value, we go home and we sit around and we help our wife cook. We don't just sit on the couch and drink 12 shots of tequila because we're trying to mend the day, right?
Yeah.
We spend time with our kids. We ask our kids questions instead of just complaining at them, right? So it changes everything. And we're not exaggerating. We can take, which is what you're doing. You're taking something off your plate and you're really good at it. I've got a friend of mine who is a dealer who needs help with used cars. And he's not the only one, but I hear it all the time among my client friends. And I will tell you that if I were them, I'd be jumping on getting a hold of you. So speaking of that, how do people get a hold of Frank Knox, VP of Unique Auto Sourcing?
Ultimately, the best way to get a hold of me is just through email. I'm ultra responsive. Frank at uassst.net
Okay.
is one way. Or, I mean, by phone. I mean, I take every call. My phone number, 224-253-3790. I never care who has that number because I'm always going to answer it. And, you know, that's just who I am. So if dealers are looking for help, we have an expert team of 4 individuals that go out and do nothing but buy cars, have all of their career done nothing but buy cars. And so combined, we probably have 120 years of experience
Whew. Whoa.
in the business.
Wow. Frank, that's really impressive. And so are you, man. One thing we didn't even
I
talk about
appreciate
is
it.
why you're so impressive. It's your faith. And I'm asking you to please come back again. Let's talk about some more of these philosophies, but let's talk about the center of it, your heart, because
Yeah.
it's huge and it shines. So thank you. Thank you for sharing what you did today tactically. Thank you for sharing your heart today. Congratulations on your life and your victory. I have one question though, man. After
Yes.
you turned it around in college with Concordia, and you were 0-10. What was the record the next year? And I'm risking this because I don't know.
So we actually went 500 that year, which
Anyway,
was, for us, that was a huge win, right?
yeah,
Like,
amen.
and even in that, the challenge was that, a lot of those games that we ended up losing, they were super close games. Like, and that was the biggest thing we were proud of is that, hey, look, we were in every game. Whereas the year before, we were just getting blown out by just about
Mm,
everybody. Right.
yeah.
So, yeah,
Change your heart, change your results.
that's right.
Absolutely. Change your
That's
head,
right.
change your heart, change your results. Hey, Frank, God bless you, my friend. See you
Hey,
soon.
you
Thank you
too,
so
Bart.
much.
I appreciate the time.
Thanks everybody for joining us. Share this. Come on, send it to your dealer friends. Send it to your people of faith that need to hear the message deeper. Send it to anyone, a parent, a son, a daughter that needs to hear this. God bless you, everybody. See you next time on Keep the Change.